Howdy ho, all you groovy guys and groovy gals. I'm so glad you made it today. This is Michael Didier speaking, and we're continuing our journey today in the way that leads to life. Don't you love the way that leads to life? That's why we're here every week, to learn the way. You know what? We've learned lies, worthless and unprofitable things. But if we will study Jehovah's word to learn about his image, his kingdom, his ways, eternal and unchanging ways, we can be set free from those lies. Well, let's continue our journey. You know what? I do a review. I do it every week. I believe it to be very, very important for two reasons. One is the context, but the other reason is for us to re-solidify what we've learned previously in our minds and in our hearts. I guess there's a third reason. There's things that I learned even from the time that I taught it to you to this week. And it gives me a chance to maybe make a few minor corrections. We saw last week that it was Abram at 75 years old who all of a sudden is going in to the land of Canaan. You know what? I want to back up even one more verse because I made a discovery this week. Last part of this verse. Look what it says here. And Terah took, here, let me do this. I can get it up higher so you can see it better. There. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, Abram's woman. And they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan. They never made it. They stopped at Haran. But here's the point that I wanted to make. Nahor and Milcah didn't go with them at this point. I always thought they did. But I saw it yesterday, in Yasher, and checked it out again. They must have shown up during the 3 years that they were in Haran before Abram left for his first journey into Canaan. Remember the first 15 years. He went 15 years. When he was 55, came back when he was 70, and left again in 75, and that's where we are right here in Genesis. He's leaving for the second time. Oh my goodness, such amazing things that we're learning. But again, Nahor and Milcah weren't there. So here he is departing. Look what it says. So Abram departed as Jehovah had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Then Abram took Sarai his woman, Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. Well, they had people who they acquired in Babylon. They had people who they acquired from the land of Haran the first time they came there when Abram was 52. And now, between 70 and 75, he made 72 more, let's call them disciples. Men who are now going to follow him into Canaan. But those men are following him. Look what it says about Lot. Lot is with him. You know what? I think we're going to discover some things about Lot today that he might have been with him, but he wasn't with him. He didn't follow Abraham Abraham was not his leader. Lot was a man doing his own thing. And I think he was a lot like his father, Haran. Remember what it said about Haran? They're getting ready to, Abram is coming before Nimrod, and it said that Haran was inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he decided that he was going to wait and see if Abram, how shall I say it, succeeds over Nimrod, he'll follow Abram. But if Nimrod succeeds, he'll follow Nimrod. Well, see, this is where people are today. They want to wait and see what happens. But you know what? You can't wait. You can't wait. Don't wait. Make yourself, I'm talking to men, make yourself holy Yahovah's now. You may not get the chance to see what the outcome is. And Haran did not get that chance. He ended up getting thrown into the fiery furnace with Abram. Didn't get a chance to learn the ways of Yahovah. Well, I'm glad you're here today learning the ways of Yahovah. Well, we'll see more about Lot. I just wanted to set that in your mind. There's something going on with Lot. He's not a follower of Abram. Okay, next, the first place they went was Shechem. It says as far as the terebinth tree of Morah. First of all, this business about the terebinth tree. I just looked this up this morning. I forgot the name of the word. Elon is what we're talking about, terebinth tree. It means oak, strong oak. It gets translated as plains quite often. So when you see the plains of Morah, when you see the plains of Mamre in many translations, know that we're talking about Elon, the oaks, or the oak at Morah, the oaks at Mamre. Again, it gets translated as plains. It's confusing. And I think, look at this is the first place he went. Okay, set this in your mind. He went to Shechem, camped there, built an altar at Shechem. Then he went down to Bethel, between Bethel and Ai. Remember that? Camped between them. I want to give you something today. Here is, let's do this. You can download this while I'm talking. Actually, I guess I got to go with this one. It is right here. This is a really cool map. It is very large. It's the map I used until I found Bible Mapper 3. But it's easy to use. It's really quite detailed. And the closer you get, it seems like you just never reach the bottom of clarity. So you can move around in this very easily. I can click on my middle wheel and I can move it down, north, south. To move it east, I guess I can move it east and west even that way too. It's really cool. This is a cool map. But he went down to Shechem. Then he went down here to Bethel. There it is, Bethel and Ai. Then he went down to Hebron, down here. Whoops. There it is, Hebron. Hebron is the terebinth tree at Mamre. So you got two terebinth trees, and if you don't discern the difference between Morah and Mamre, you tend to be confused. And you know what? I got a hunch that there's a little bit of confusion between Genesis and Yasher. I'm going to show it to you today. We'll take a look at that. But this map is available online. I put it on my blog, and I'm going to send it to you right now. Here is, actually, I guess I've got it already loaded in my thing here. I just got to hit send. There it is right there. Go to that link, copy and paste it, or just save that link. It's really a valuable tool. This is something that I used for years until I got the Bible Mapper 3. It's helped me a lot. I hope you enjoy it. It's a nice, easy tool to use, especially online. Like I said, you can navigate it very easily by just hitting your wheel, tapping on your wheel. It allows you to kind of move left, right, up, down, and then you can do a control plus, minus to get it closer or further away. Yeah, it's really a neat tool. Okay, let's go back to Genesis. We went from Bethel, we continued south. Remember Bethel, he built another altar there. And you know, these are places, Shechem, he's going to buy the land in Shechem, right outside Shechem. Was at Bethel often. This is the place where the rock was that he talked with Yehovah and laid on this rock. This is the place where Jacob is going to return to when he is robbed by Esau on his way to Haran with all the wonderful blessings that his father had given him, riches and all kinds of stuff. Esau stole it all, and remember, Jacob was penniless. He was out towards Shechem area, and he actually was heading home to Bethel. This is where he spoke to Yehovah as well. And then, of course, Mamre, the terebinth trees at Mamre is Hebron. It's also, what was the other name for that? Important names. Kirjath Arba. Kirjath Arba. It has several names. This is where the cave is going to be that they get to bury their dead in. That Abram's going to get. Okay, so then there was a famine in the land. Remember, this is still the same year, 75 years old. Abram is now heading all the way down to Egypt. Oh, but I have such a beautiful woman. They're going to want to take my woman. You know what? Abram must have had lots and lots of women in his entourage. Remember, we said he left with probably close to 1,000 men and women. 600 men, perhaps. He was able to rally in just 2 more years. Well, 3 years, 78. He's going to rally 318 trained young men born in his house. This is a large group that's going down to Egypt. She must be a real looker to be separated from all those men and women. Let's say women. Well, so he says, please say you're my sister. When they're there, I mean, it hardly says anything about it. When they're there, kind of the bride price, if you will, it says, he treated Abram, he being Pharaoh, he treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, male or female donkeys, and camels. These are things that he apparently is giving to Abram. It doesn't make it clear in Genesis at all. He treated Abraham well for her sake. He had. Oh, great. He had it. Did he give it to Abram? We don't know. Well, he did. And then it says, one verse, But Jehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's woman. Well, again, I have this idea of wife versus woman. I constantly am trying to help you understand that if we will learn woman, it's going to help us deepen our understandings instead of wife. Husband, there is no word for husband. A husband is her man. We're going to see that today as well. In fact, we're going to see it in Yasher's narrative of this very event. You said he was your brother, but he was really your husband. When they left, Pharaoh, we're going to see today, is going to give him more sheep, oxen, sheep. It's zeon, it's flocks, sheep and goats. Oxen is the cattle, male donkeys, male and female servants. He's going to do it twice, once to bring her into his house and once to get rid of her. So then we turned to Yasher. And here we are in Yasher. Again, this is actually when they're leaving Haran. Again, we got to kind of keep in mind there's basically three leavings. Terah, Abram, Lot leaving Haran with their women and the souls of his household. Remember, it says with his wife and son and all the souls of his household. Terah had souls of his household. Abram has souls of his household. He didn't when he was living with Noah for 50 years. But when he got thrown into that fiery furnace last time, 2 weeks ago, he got 200 men and their families. He's got lots of souls of his household. And another thing occurred to me. Terah, okay? Terah is the head of Nimrod's host. He's been the head of Nimrod's host for 50 years. When Abram was born 50 years ago, he's actually been head of Nimrod's host for more than 50 years. But when Abram was born, remember, he was going to fill Abram's house with silver and gold if he would let him kill Abram. Terah would let Nimrod kill Abram. Well, he thought he did. And he would have received those riches, the silver and gold that Nimrod promised Terah. So Terah is an extremely wealthy man. I can't say he's probably the wealthiest man next to Nimrod because remember, Nimrod's princes were Mitzrayim, Canaan, Put, and Cush. His uncles. I would guess they're the richest. But Terah is a wealthy man. And Haran was his eldest son. Remember, these boys are not boys at all. Abram's 50 when he got thrown into the fire furnace, and Haran was 82. That makes Lot about 40 years old when Haran dies. Lot is the only son of Haran. Do you think he's inheriting quite a large amount of servants' wealth to take with him out of Ur? I got a hunch that's why Nahor and Milcah didn't come right away. They were tying up loose ends because their father Terah left quickly. They were selling the house. having a garage sale. Let's think about these things and how it all fits together. It really gives us a whole new attitude about who Lot is. Lot, the heir of Haran. Lot's leaving Lot's leaving Babylon with male and female servants, probably flocks and cattle, wealth that was passed down to Haran. Lot is the head of his household. He's 40 years old. He probably was self-sustaining already. And so now he's inheriting all the stuff that Haran had. So Lot this is not a boy going out of town with Abram. Okay, this is what we think. This is another man with another family going with Abram out of the land. But this is out of Ur right now. Remember, Ur is where Noah was at. Okay, so again, it's hard to see how all the pieces fit together, but when you understand how they fit together, it gives us so much more understanding as to what this looked like. So now it's talking about the people of the land. Abram went to the people of the land. I already told you. He made disciples, taught them the instructions of Jehovah. It says these men remained with Abram in his house and they adhered to him. We don't even know how many there was. Some of the people of the land, it says. Then Jehovah speaks to Abram after he's been in Haran for 3 years. This is where he talks about, I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven. Remember, it's always about the land and the seed. So he's leaving the first time at 55. Yasher says 50, but it's 55. We find that out very, very clearly. He comes to Canaan, pitches his tent. Okay, where is he pitching his tent? We don't know right offhand. Building an altar. Yahweh speaking to him again about thy seed and the land. This is the land which I give thee and to thy seed after thee forever. I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven. Yehovah is raising up Abram's seed even now to fulfill the promise that came, the prophecy that came at Abram's birth. We're going to see it partially fulfilled either today or next week. But in these latter days, it's going to be fulfilled again because all the kingdoms of the earth are going to succumb to Abram's seed. So now, look what it says. Nahor didn't go with them, did he? I showed you that. But look what it says. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his woman, and all belonging to him, and all those who accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. So that's the 200 men plus the some men that joined him. But look what it says. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah's father, and Lot, the son of Haran, and all belonging to them, dwelt in Haran. So that means in the last 3 years, Nahor showed up. I think he was tying up loose ends. And then he and Milcah and his servants and his flocks and his cattle came to Haran. Remember, they stopped in Haran. Why? Because it was a good place to graze. Terah must have had flocks and cattle. It says, in the 5th year of Abraham dwelling in Canaan, so now he's 50, now he's 60, Chedorlaomer rebels against Nimrod and then takes Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, maybe even Zor. I'm not clear on Zor, but he puts them under his control. He conquers those cities. They're now under his, what do we call it when they have to pay a yearly tribute to them. Five years later, Nimrod and Chedorlaomer are going to have a battle because Nimrod doesn't like the fact that Chedorlaomer left. So what happens? Nimrod comes after Chedorlaomer with 700,000 men. Remember, Chedorlaomer is a son of Shem. Nimrod is supposed to serve the sons of Shem. But Nimrod's never served the sons of Shem. He's always made it about him, hasn't he? He's been the mighty one. But now he's coming after Chedorlaomer and his seed with 700,000 men, and Chedorlaomer only has 5,000 men. Who gets whopped? Nimrod gets whopped. 600,000 men he loses, including his son, Mardon. In the 15th year of Abram dwelling in the land of Canaan, now he's 70. Couple different things are going on here. This is the beginning of the 430 years, which we talked about last week. You can figure it out. I gave you the timeline for the 430 years, and it appears in Genesis 13 or Genesis 12 that we were in Egypt. We weren't in Egypt for 430 years. We were in Egypt for 210 years. And we were really only in severe bondage for about half of that amount of time. The rest of the time in Egypt, we were blessed because Joseph was with us. So now here is Yahovah in the 70th year speaking again to Abram. He's going to go home. It says, and at that time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and his mother and his father's household. Look at this. His father and his mother. His mother's still alive. When they left Ur, didn't even mention her, did it? No, not at all. She's a woman. It's talking about, it mentions Sarai. Why? Because Sarai is somebody who's going to be a significant person in giving birth and, well, a significant person in Genesis as a whole. She's the one that's going to give Hagar to Abram. She's the one who's going to bear finally at 90 years old Isaac. So it says, and many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram. So here we are. We had the 200 men, then we had a bunch of them that came when they came to Haran. Now here we are 15 years later, 72 more men are joining themselves. Of course, the men come with their families, are joining themselves to Abram. And that's where we switch to Genesis, but we continue here because we're still doing our review. Now, after 5 years in Haran, Abram is now leaving again. This time, Lot is going to go with him. It says, and Abram went and returned to Canaan, according to the word of Yahovah. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. Well, why does it say that? Remember, there are 200 men, plus some men, plus 72 men, with all their families who are going with them. But yet it says Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. Again, I think that Lot is with him, but he's not with him. He's going along for the ride. I think Lot knows that he gets blessed if he stays with Abram. I think he's in it more for the blessing. Kind of think about that and keep that in mind. So now, 75 years old, Abram is leaving. This is where the account in Genesis 12 picks up. But look what it says. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of Jehovah to Abram. And he pitched his tent and he dwelt in the plains of Mamre. The plains of Mamre, remember, that's the terebinth tree. Don't buy the terebinth tree of Mamre. It's the oaks. But this says Mamre. When he left in Genesis 12, where did he go? To the terebinth tree, the terebinth tree, the oaks at Morah. So which is it? Morah or Mamre? Remember, he went from Morah in Genesis 12 to Bethel and Ai to Hebron. Well, no, he didn't even go to Hebron. He went down to Egypt. Who's right? I got a hunch Genesis is correct. But now we're starting our story for today. Does that say 24 or 34?
34.
All right, still took me half an hour. Sorry, folks. In those days, there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom and a beautiful appearance. But he was poor and indigent. His name was Rikayon. He was hard set to support himself. And he resolved to go to Egypt, to Aswiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt. The king of Egypt. How do you get to be the king of Egypt? How about founding the city? Anam, the king, Oharis, Aswiris, the son of Anam. Look at Mitzrayim was the one who founded Egypt. That's where he went. Ludim, he says, Mitzrayim begat, here, let me open it up for you. Mitzrayim begat Ludim, Anamim. Okay, this is something that's so typical of Genesis. They don't really give their names, they give the names of the people. Anam, seed, are called the Anamim. Ludims, lewd seeds, look at they're called lewd. Lewd seeds are called the ludim. You see how it works? So we got to kind of get past some of this. I don't know how they write it is a little bit tricky. We've got to get some little bit better understandings. So anyway, Anam is a descendant of Mitzrayim. He's the king. It says, and he resolved to go to Egypt, to Aswiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight, to raise him up and to give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. You know what? I really had reservations about whether I even wanted to go through this information. When we're done, we'll talk about why I decided to go through it. It says, and when Rikayon came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Egypt told him the customs of the king of Egypt. For it was then that the custom of the king of Egypt that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And afterwards the king would return to his palace and remain there. Here's a king reigning over a people that he only comes and sees once a year. You want to ask a king a question? You don't make an appointment. You wait until he comes out, and then you get to ask him your question. Pretty poor leadership, if you ask me. And on the day when the king went forth and passed judgments in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. And when Richion heard the custom of Egypt, and that he could not come into the presence of the king, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening Richion went and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Egypt, and he abode there. He's a homeless man trying to make his way in the world. He abode there all night in bitterness of soul and pinched with hunger. And sleep was removed from his eyes. And Richion considered himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. So he wants to still get to the king. Doesn't know how to do it yet. Wasn't as easy as he thought it would be. And he rose in the morning and walked about and met in his way with those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seed, which they supplied to the inhabitants. Isn't that interesting? The vegetable suppliers are also seed suppliers. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Seems like you'd be selling seed, you'd be putting yourself out of business, but I guess there's enough people that still want your vegetables. And he would obtain vegetables to sell them for his support. And the rabble assembled about him, ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him and left him nothing. So here's a group of people now, they call him the rabble, who robbed him, stole his stuff, prevented him from making a living. You know how hard it is to start a business in the world today? It's not easy. They're against you. They like the status quo the way it is. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul, and he went sighing to the bakehouse in which he had remained all the night before. And he slept there a second night. And on that night again he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation. He devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up early in the morning and, acting ingeniously, creatively, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands, collecting the riffraff from the city to make them his men. And he led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, "Thus says the king." He's speaking for the king. "Strengthen yourselves and be valiant men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried." And those men did according to the order of Richion to the people of Egypt the whole of that year. He was robbed by the rabble, but now he's using the rabble for his own gains. And in 8 months' time, Richion and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Richion took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. So it's almost like he's strengthening his army, isn't he? And when the year came round, at the time the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together to speak with him concerning the work of Richion and his men. They're unhappy. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Egyptians came before him and cried unto him, saying, "May the king live forever." He's still got to be polite. "What is this thing thou hast done to thy servants? Not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth, from the days of the former kings, yea, even to the days of Adam unto this day, that the dead should be buried only for a set price? Well, isn't that exactly where we're at right now? We not only make them pay to be buried in the earth, but we also steal most of their riches from the dead so that it doesn't go to the heirs. Okay, I'm trying to help us understand how this world relates with the world that we live in today. It goes on. And we know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, the tribute. But thou dost not only do this, but from the dead also thou exactest a tax day by day, every day. Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on this account. And dost thou not know it? And when the king heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And the king said, who and where is he who dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. Well, watch what happens. And they told him all the works of Richion and his men. And the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Richion and his men to be brought before him. And Richion took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery. And he set them upon horses and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king. Bribes. Reminds me of lobbyists bribing the senators, the representatives for the votes. This is what's going on right here with the king. Using this gold, silver, and this beautiful horse to pay off the king. Let's continue. With which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Richion. And they saw his riches and the present that he brought to the king. And it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Richion sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works. And Richion spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of the land. Remember, this is a man, it's called him wise. Worldly wise, but someone that could speak words that people liked. We got lots of politicians like that, don't we? And when the king heard the words of Richion and his wisdom, Richion found grace in his sight. And he met with grace and kindness from his servants of the king and from the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Richion, thy name shall no more be called Richion, but Pharaoh shall be thy name, since thou did exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. Well, I did some research this week to see what the word Pharaoh means. Where does it come from? And so many, it's like there's no agreement whatsoever. Many use this word Ra, which is in the middle of his name, to make it something about a sun god or sun related. Some have, I forget what the other things were, mighty house, I believe it was. Mighty house was what it meant. But here is Yasher going through all this to tell us about attacks from the dead. Pharaoh. Take it for what it's worth. And the king and his subjects loved Richion for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Egypt to make him prefect under the king. This is kind of where Joseph was, a prefect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Egypt and its wise men did so. And it was made a law in Egypt. And they made Richion, Pharaoh, prefect under Ahasuerus, king of Egypt. And Richion, Pharaoh, governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. Now they're getting a man that they can get to at any time. He's available to them. But Ahasuerus the king would judge the people of the land one day a year when he went out to make his appearance. And Richion cunningly usurped the government of Egypt, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. Do you remember the story of David and how, I believe it was Absalom, who stood at the gates of the city making judgments, and he usurped David's authority and created a coup to where David actually ended up having to flee. This is kind of what's going on here. Tells me that a king needs a lord, a master, the L of the city needs to make himself available to the men of the city. And all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Richion Pharaoh. And they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed. Remember, men reign over men, not women. Men reign over their own women. So we're talking about reigning over them, the men of the city, and their seed. That's other men in Egypt. Pharaoh, they're going to call him Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Egypt from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. Well, not righteous men who are leading these men of Egypt. So now this is the context that we have another man coming down from the north. His name is Abram. There's a famine in Canaan, and Abram is going to Egypt. And that year, it's the same year. The same year that he went to the trees at Morah, Shechem. The same year that he camped between Bethel and Ai. He's now going to Egypt. And in that year, there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan. And the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went to Egypt. Okay, keep in mind, when we're talking about Abram and all belonging to him, we're talking about 1,000 people. Massive amounts of cattle, sheep, Zaon, goats, sheep and goats is the Zaon. Or the zone, maybe I should say. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook of Mitzrayim, they remained there for some time from the fatigue of the road. I want to show you where the brook of Egypt was. I misspoke last week. I don't know if you even caught it. it's a little bit harder to catch because I had something on here. Let me do this. I want to go back to 50. I want to turn on, no, first I'm going to turn this on. Or do this. Here is the Brook of Egypt. What did they call that? Did they call it the Brook of Mitzrayim just now? Yeah, Brook Mitzrayim. This is not the river Mitzrayim. This is Brook Mitzrayim. And I think what we're talking about is this brook right here, the Brook of Egypt. Ber Laroy, Ler Lahai Roy is at this intersection. They're probably coming down this path, this road, if you'll call it a road. It's the way to Shur. Up here they call it Central Ridge Route. But it's the way that people travel from one spot to the next. It's the most traveled route. It's where the hotels are on the road. Provisions, water, probably wells were available along this road. But they stopped here for some time to rest. Remember, they have a large group. You got to lead gently when you're working with so many people. There's pregnant ladies. There's newborn sheep, newborn cattle, newborn goats. Got to lead gently. So they're stopping to rest, kind of reevaluate their situation, perhaps. And this is where he's going to realize, gee, I got a good-looking woman here, and they're going to want to take her from me. Well, that's the fear in Abram that's going to take advantage of him, really. And Abram, all belonging to him, rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim. And Abram beheld his wife Sarai, that she was very beautiful. A hot chick, good-looking woman. She's 65 years old. And Abram said to his woman Sarai, since Elohim has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away. For the fear of Elohim is not in these places. Well, isn't that what we just saw? Ricky on, do they fear Elohim? No, they're more concerned about the rabble, aren't they? The might and the strength of the world. Remember, this is how the world operates, by fear and intimidation. And you know what? I hate to say it, but I think Abram was so fresh out of the world still that he was influenced by the fear and the intimidation. Here's a good verse to always keep in mind. The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in Yehovah shall be safe. Don't fear what men can do to you. Fear what Yehovah can do to you. You know, if Abraham had really thought about this, the promise was what? To thy seed I will give this land. If he knows that Yehovah is a man of his word, I use that man loosely, an Elohim of his word, he knows, and he knows. Remember, he swore by the name of Yehovah. He knows that what Yehovah says, he does. But I think it slipped his mind. Because if he really understood this, he would know that he can't be harmed. Can't be harmed. He hasn't had a seed yet. Perhaps he could after he's had a seed. But he's not had a seed yet. Not had a son yet. Surely then thou shalt do this. Say thou art my sister. Remember, she's his niece. But she's also a woman of worth. And what the master asks her to do, she is going to do. Say, thou art my sister, to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those who came with him. So first he says it to his woman, say you're my sister. Now he's going to say it to all the people who came with him. And Abram commanded the same to all that came with him to Egypt on account of the famine. Now look what it says. Also, his nephew Lot he commanded. Isn't Lot one of the people that came with him to Egypt? But see, they treat Lot differently. Saying, if the Egyptians ask thee concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. Well, remember, she's the sister of Lot. And yet, with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them. He couldn't trust them. I don't think he could trust Lot, especially. But he took Sarai, placed her in a chest, and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. Hide her in a box. And Abram and all belonging to him rose from the brook Mitzrayim and came to Egypt. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Egypt. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed. And the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, what hast thou here in the chest, which we have not seen? Jeez Louise, this is where we are today. The border guards for going from one country to the next. They want to see everything, don't they? There's no privacy. Now open up the chest and give a tithe to the king of all it contains. And Abram said, this chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, it is a chest of precious stones. Give us a tenth thereof. And Abram said, all that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. Homeland Security. And they saw a beautiful woman was in the chest. And the officers of the king beheld Sarai. They were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and the servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai. And she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made a present to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. Just bringing him the good news about her, they got rewarded. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house. And Abram grieved on account of his woman. And he prayed to Jehovah to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed. Here's a woman that's doing exactly what her husband told her to do. And now, really, because of what he told her to do, she's been separated from her husband. But this is still a woman of worth that's doing what she can to obey her husband. And Sarai also prayed at that time and said, O Yahovah Elohim, not her Elohim, but Yahovah Elohim, thou didst tell Adonai, my master, Abram, to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan. And thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou didst command us. Hear that? Bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. We have done that which thou hast commanded us. We have left our land, our families. We went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine. And this evil accident has befallen me. Help me. Now therefore, Yahovah Elohim, deliver us. Save us from the hands of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. And Yahovah hearkened to the voice of Sarai. You know what? This is one of the few places where Yahovah hearkens to the voice of a woman. You got to watch closely. But generally, when a woman's praying, it's going to be the man, her man, not necessarily her immediate man, but it could be multi-generations, who are going to pray for her and bring her the message from Yahovah. So, it says, and Yahovah hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Yahovah sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. Again, here's a woman obedient to her man, even to the point of being taken by another man, who's now praying to Yahovah. Watch what happens. Here's an angel, a messenger, coming from Yahovah to, what does it say? And Yahovah sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of Yahovah was standing over them. You don't even see this hardly ever where you actually see a supernatural being. This is so rare. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, do not fear, for Yahovah has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, what is that man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, he is Aki, my brother. And the king said, it is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou, Sarai, shall command us. And at that time, here it is. Now it's clear what's going to Abram. Remember, Abram is not a poor man at all. Nimrod gave him lots of silver and gold and precious stones. It says, and at that time, the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, herds probably, or livestock, men servants and maid servants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house, and the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. Are they still in the king's presence? Look what it says. And the king approached to speak to Sarai. Was Abram there still? And he reached out to touch her, and the angel smote him heavily. And he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. It just says he plagued Pharaoh and his household. Here it is right here. But Jehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's woman. That's all it says. We get so much more in Yasher. Now it goes on. And when the king came near to Sarai, an angel smote him to the ground and acted thus to him the whole night. And the king was terrified. That's twice in a row he says the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. Now we know the rest of the story. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that beheld him, said, surely on account of this woman, this Isha, has this thing happened to me? And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, look what it says, this man is my husband. Okay, I would want to know the rest of the story. And so that made me go back and look at every place in the Torah where I could find it uses the word husband. And you know what it says? Practically every place. It says, my ish. Ishi, my ish. So what does it say? This man is my man. I think it really what it says is he is my ish. He is ishi. And I said to thee that he was my brother. See, now it fits. He is my Ishi, and I said that he was my brother. You see how it fits better? For I was afraid, lest thou should put him to death through wickedness. It's too bad that Abram's fear became her fear. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she's still speaking for Abram. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues, that's the same verse, the plagues of the angel of Jehovah ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai. Smitten on account of Sarai. I think that's funny. I put a note here. He says, he was smitten by Jehovah because he was smitten by another man's woman. He was smitten by Sarai on account of Sarai. And the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, what is this thou hast done to me? Why didst thou say she is my sister? Owning which I took her unto me for a woman. And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy woman. Take her and go from our land, lest we die, as we all die, on account of her. And Pharaoh took more cattle. Look at that. More cattle, more servants, more maidservants, and silver and gold to give to Abram. And he returned unto him his woman. Well, he's going to do even one better. Look what he's going to give her next. This is Hagar. And the king took a maiden whom he begat by his concubine, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. This is Hagar. And the king said to his daughter, it is better for thee, my daughter. Here's a woman born to the king. Yes, she's born through a concubine, but she's still in the king's house. She's the king's daughter. Look what it says. And the king said to his daughter, it is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house. Wow, that is profound. You know what? I don't have a woman in my life right now. Part of it is because of this very thing. I'm a pauper. There may be rich women out there, but they think it's better to stay a rich man than to become a woman of a righteous man. But here's the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, who understands. Remember, I wonder if this is Rickion. Could this possibly be the one they called Rickion? I don't think so. I think it would be much later. I might be wrong though. I might be wrong. Remember, it's just recently that the Tower of Babel fell just when he was 48 years old. Now he's what? 58 years old. No, 75 years old. Not talking too much. 22 years, 23 years. Not much time has gone by. Could it be the same guy? I wonder. But look at the wisdom. It's better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. He knows that Jehovah is with this man. This man has something that no other men have. And Abram arose. He and all belonging to him went away from Egypt. And Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him and all that went with him. Getting an escort out of town. We saw it in Genesis 13, but I don't think we really saw it. Abram is getting an escort. Let's take a look at it. We're going to go to chapter 13 of Genesis now, and then we'll come back to this a little bit later today if we get time. Here it is. 12. Here. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him. This is the escort. And they sent him away with his woman and all that he had. So now we get to talk about Lot. And Abram went up from Egypt. Anything away from Egypt is up, is a good thing. Lot followed Abram. Lot is with Abram, but he is not with Abram. Look what it says. And Abram was very rich. It says, and Lot was with him to the south. Well, was he with him? Everybody else was with him in the north. But Lot is with him in the south. Does that sound like he's with him? I don't think so. And Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. Well, isn't that exactly what Pharaoh gave him twice? He was already rich. Now he's richer. He got livestock and silver and gold, male and female servants. Well, I put this is true wealth. Livestock, silver, and gold. That's real wealth. The script that we trade and call money is not wealth at all. It's existing because of everybody's willing to take it. But it's worthless. Worthless script. Fiat, that's the word I'm looking for. Fiat money. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai. So he's going back to that same place. In fact, let's just remind ourselves where it is he's going. The chance. So here he is coming back up from Egypt, probably on the way to Shur, coming back up. He's going to go all the way up to Bethel, which is right here, where the cursor's at or where my hand's at, depending on whether you're watching it live or on the video. But I wanted to show you down here. Last week, I kind of screwed you up a little bit. I got to change this to 30, and I've got to put on the political boundaries. I said last week that the river Mitzrayim, the Nile, was right in here someplace. And I didn't realize I was looking at Egyptian domain and not Egypt itself. Here's the Nile. It's over here. There's the delta. Duh. I don't know what I was thinking. I just brain cramp. Sorry. But wanted to just clean that up a little bit. I always want to have it. I want to have it as correct as I can possibly have for you guys. Let's turn off the boundaries again. So this is where he's going. Bethel. Back up to here. There we go. 75. There's Bethel. Bethel and I. There's Shechem. Okay? Want to go, I guess we got to go to, we are already at 13. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of Jehovah. Calling on the name of Jehovah. You know what? There are few people who will call on the name of Jehovah. Jehovah, help us! Deliver us! Preserve us! Most call on the name of the Elohim of the land. They're in sickness, they call on the doctors. They're in trouble with the law, they call on the lawyers and the judges. But I want you to see what kind of people it is that calls on the name of Jehovah. Here's Abraham doing it. Abram called on the name of Jehovah. Look at this is Elijah in 1 Kings 18:24. He called on the name of Jehovah. Look what it says. Then you shall call on the name of your Elohim. And I, Elijah, shall call on the name of Jehovah. And the Elohim who answers by fire, he is Elohim. So all the people, we're talking about men, answered and said, it is well spoken. He called all Israel, the men of Israel, to be with him in Mount Carmel. Here's David doing the same thing. I will call upon Jehovah, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Here's us in the last days, the 144,000 servants of Jehovah. And it shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of Jehovah shall be saved. This is not only those servants, but it's also the men who are joining themselves to those servants. For in Mount Zion and Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as Jehovah has said, among the remnants whom Jehovah calls. Here's another one about even later in the last days. This is Zephaniah 3:1-9. You know what? I want to look at this in the context of the whole thing. Let's go there. Woe to her who is rebellious and polluted. The oppressing city, it's not to the oppressing city, the oppressing city. The oppressing city is the her. Who are we talking about? Rome, Babylon, Egypt. She has not obeyed his voice. She has not received correction. She has not trusted in Jehovah. She has not drawn near to Elohim. This is what Egypt's like. Remember, this is Rigion. The princess who can be bribed, the king who can be bribed. Her princes in her midst are roaring lions. Her judges are evening wolves. They leave not a bone till morning. Her prophets are insolent, treacherous people. Her priests have polluted the sanctuary. They have done violence to the law, to the Torah. Jehovah is righteous in her midst. He will do no unrighteousness. Every morning he brings his justice to light. He never fails, but the unjust knows no shame. He says, I have cut off nations. Their fortresses are devastated. This, to me, is talking about the first great shaking of the earth. I've cut off nations. Their fortresses are devastated. I have made their streets desolate. With none passing by, their cities are destroyed. There is no one, no inhabitant. I said, surely you will fear me. You will receive instruction, so that her dwelling would not be cut off, despite everything for which I punished her. But they rose early and corrupted their deeds. Therefore wait for me, says Jehovah, until the day I rise up for plunder. My determination is to gather the nations, to assemble my kingdoms, to pour on them my indignation, all my fierce anger. All the earth shall be devoured with fire of my jealousy. For then I will restore to the people a pure language, that they all may call on the name of Jehovah. There it is, calling upon the name of Jehovah to serve him in one accord. The people of pure language, we're talking about men. Don't confuse it with ladies. You know what? We read things like this and we see people and we think women. Don't think women, think men. Women, follow your man. Serve Jehovah. Call on his name, men. Let's go back. Lot also went with Abram. There it is again. Lot also went with Abram. Well, duh. Isn't he with Abram? No, Lot also went with Abram. You see, we see this. Once we understand Lot, we begin to understand that he's not with Abraham. He went with Abraham. He's traveling with Abraham. He's getting blessed with Abraham, but he's not with him. No, but men own all the property here. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. Okay? Lot is the one who has it. And it's not his wife. We don't even know who his wife is. It's Lot that has the property. He had male and female servants. We'll see it in just a second. Remember, he has sheep herders. Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together. For their possessions, see, his possessions are not Abram's possessions. He's got his own possessions, doesn't he? For their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land. Well, we might not get, how are we doing on time? 12:31? We might not get to this, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. This is Yasher. We may get to it today. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds, and tents. And Jehovah was bountiful to him on account of Abram. This is why I say I think Lot is with Abram because he gets blessed. But he's not with Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land. The grass is just not available for them, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flocks, they would not go to the fields of the people of the land. But the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence. Who are the people? Men! Saw the occurrence daily. And they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, what is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people, other men's fields? Dost thou not know I am a stranger in this land, amongst Canaan's seed? There it is, the seed. Canaan's B'nai Canaan, or Bani Canaan. Canaan's seed. Why wilt thou do this unto me? See, you can't even see we're talking about men until we understand what B'nai is, but Bani is. And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this. But Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same to the inhabitants of the land, and came and told Abram. This is the kind of thing that gets a man to put his woman out of his house when she won't obey him. You got a servant that won't obey him, you got to get rid of the servant. But you got a relative, makes it a little bit harder, especially a man relative. What's Abram going to do? Here it is. He says, so Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between thee and me, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen. They each have herdsmen, for we are brethren. Aki gets translated as brother many times, and he's not his brother. Is not the whole land before thee? Please separate from me. Look, he says, please separate from me. Abram's not ordering him. He's another man. He can't order him. He can order his servants, he can order his woman, but he can't order his brethren. Please separate from me. If thou take the left, then I will go to the right. And if thou go to the right, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw the plains of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Jehovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So, before Jehovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, that must have been a very, very fruitful valley. Luxurious. Now it's a desert waste. like the garden of Jehovah, it says, like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zor. He says, as you go toward Zor, it's like Egypt, the land of Egypt. Remember the land of Egypt where they had the delta, how beautiful it was? Originally, Zor was called Bela. Remember, Bela was the one, the Shemite who came down from Nineveh, founded the city of Bela, and then later on it was called Zor. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. I think Abram must have been so relieved to have that man gone who is bringing such disruption to his house. Can't keep people like that around you. It doesn't work. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan. And Lot dwelt in the cities of the plains and pitched his tent, even as far as Sodom. The cities of the plains, there's that word plain. That makes me want to look and see what word they use for this word plain. Cities of the plain, what word do they use? Yeah, see, it's a completely different word. Kikar. Kikar. Yeah. So when it gets translated, the plains of Morah or the plains of Mamre, we know we're talking about a different word entirely. Inquiring minds want to know. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and stretched his tents as far as Sodom. Oh, wait till we see how wicked these are. Well, look at the next verse. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Jehovah. Who was wicked and sinful against Jehovah? What does it say? The women of Sodom? No, it says the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Jehovah. A woman can't be wicked and sinful against Jehovah. She can only be wicked and sinful against her man. Oh, I know. Doesn't that just drive you nuts when I say that? Why? Because it defies everything that we previously learned. It's not about a woman serving Jehovah. It's about a woman serving her man. And a woman who won't serve her man, what is she to Jehovah? I'll tell you, you better take this stuff seriously. Yeah, these men were wicked. Evil ones and sinners are all men, not women. Enosh, that's the word they use for men. Enosh. Mortal men. 14. And Jehovah said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him. After Lot had separated, now he's going to say something again. Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land which you see, I will give to you and your seed, your descendants, forever. That's the seed, the Zerah, thy Zerah. And I will make your seed as the dust of the earth. Here, it's again, I put it there. There's the Zerah. Seed. Thy seed. And I will make your descendants, your seed, as the dust of the earth. So that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your seed also could be numbered. He says, arise, walk in the land, walk in the eretz, through its length and its width, for I give it to thee. Then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees, the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to Jehovah. Here's what a terebinth tree looks like. In fact, this is supposedly the terebinth tree at Mamre. Here, there it is right there. This one says, as I recall, it says it died in 1996. Abram's oak at Mamre, 5,000 years old, has been dead since 1996. Mamre means manliness, and Mamre was an Amorite. Remember, the cities, the places are all named after the people of the land, mainly men, and it says men, their sons, and an occurrence that happens in that place. An Amorish king, remember, an Amorite is a son of Canaan. Amoritish king in allegiance with Abram. So again, there's our 5,000-year-old tree. Hard to get really visual on that without the, well, I guess the flowers help a little bit. Okay, let's go back to Yasher. It says, and Abram returned to the land of Canaan. This is where we are, just leaving Egypt, to the place where he had made an altar, Bethel, Ai, where he had first pitched his tent, between Bethel and Ai. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, there it says brother, we just called him brethren here a minute ago. He's his nephew, he's a family member. Aki had heavy stock of cattle, flocks, herds, and tents. Okay, that's what we just saw in Genesis. For Jehovah was bountiful to them who, Lot and Abram, remember, they're not together. They're not together. Lot's not following him. Lot's doing his own thing. He's the fence sitter. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for the property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of the cattle. Remember, this is still the very first year of Abram's second journey in Canaan. He's still 75. We're reading these chapters, and we always got to keep track of dates and ages. I really like Yasher for this. It always gives us the dates. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flocks, they would not go to the fields of the people. Again, the people are men. Men own the fields. But the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise. For they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. Isn't it interesting? How come they're complaining to Abram for what Lot's doing? Is it possible that Lot won't listen to them? They're just going to do their own thing anyway. Lot's going to do his own thing. He's hoping that Abram can help them, or they're hoping that Abram can help them. I think that's what's going on. And Abram said to Lot, what is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst, there it is, Canaan's seed? Oh, doesn't it just drive you nuts that they always want to make this the children of? It throws us off terribly. And why wilt thou do this unto me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this. But Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram, still doing it. Tried to correct him. He didn't listen. Still doing his own thing. And Abram said to Lot, how long wilt thou be to me a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. Again, if this was a woman, his woman doing this, he would get rid of her. She would not stay. If this was a servant who would not hearken to what he's saying, he'd get rid of her. But he can't do it with Lot because Lot's just with him. He's tagging along. But I pray thee, separate from me. Go and choose a place where thou mayst dwell, with thy cattle and all belonging to thee, your women and your children and your men and maidservants. But keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household. I think Abram's trying to be nice, but he's frustrated. I put a note here. This is the one about the women. I said, Lot is supposed to be following Abram, but instead he's a stumbling block to him. This is why a man divorces his woman. She will not obey him. Can't have people like that around you. And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him. So maybe Lot is sticking with Abraham because of the protection that Abraham provides for he and his household. And Abram is trying to help Lot understand that even if he does separate from him, that he's still going to be protected by him. And Abraham has spoken all these words to Lot. Then Lot arose, lifted up his eyes towards the plain of Jordan. Oh, by the way, I put Abraham, we will see, is true to his word. He said, if anybody hurts thee, I will come after him. And he did. We'll see that next week. And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered, talking about the plain of the Jordan, and good for man, as well as affording pasture for cattle. Good for man. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sodom. Now this one says he dwelt in Sodom. The other one said he dwelt as near as Sodom. And they separated from each other. I'm sure Abram's going, thank you, Father, for that. And Abraham dwelt in the plain of Mamre. This, it says, which is Hebron. And he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained there in that place for many years. This place called Hebron, called the plains of Mamre, called... All right, well, this is again the map that we had. Here it is down here, Hebron. Kirjath Arba. Kuriath. It says Kirjath Arba in many translations because they make it that J, the Yoda J. But it's Kuriath Arba. Hebron. Mamre. All the same area. This is going to be Abram's place. This is where really Sarai is going to die when he takes his son Isaac up to up to Jerusalem, Mount Moriah. This is where he's going to leave from. It's a 3 days journey. But yeah, this is going to be his home base for a long time in his life. The other place he's going to have is Beersheba. It's going to be a place where he hangs out quite a lot. All right. Well, that finishes it for today. I'm glad when we can finish a chapter evenly. It makes things a lot nicer. All right. And next week we get to do Chedorlaomer. Look at this. Remember, we said that it was Chedorlaomer who put Nimrod and his host under tribute. I guess I lost my spot there. Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, there it is right there. Yeah, put him under tribute. And so now, Chedorlaomer, he also did it to this guy, Arioch, king of Elazar, to title king of nations. And now these 4 kings with 800,000 men are going to come down to the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela as well. And this is where Lot's going to be taken. And next week we're going to see what happens when Abram takes 318 of his trained young men born in his household and goes after this group of men to get Lot back, Lot and his family. Ooh, exciting stuff. And it's so interesting that this guy Nimrod in Torah calls him Amraphel. So now we know the rest of that story. We realize that Nimrod and Abram, they had dealings with one another constantly. We just didn't know it. Okay, let's stop here, and thank you for joining me, everybody. You can always listen to these recordings on my YouTube channel. Please, if you will, when you go there, sign up for YouTube and then subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll get all of them as they come out to you. All right? Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you again next time. Bye now.